AJ, you can hear us okay, yeah?
Yep, loud and clear.
Recording in progress.
All right, everybody. I got 6:30. We're going to call the regular meeting in the Common Council to order. We'll start with roll call, please.
Seth,
The regular meeting in the Common.
Andrew,
Here.
Kirky,
Here.
Emma, Todd Spade,
Here.
Cindy,
Here.
John,
Here.
Crystal, here, Steve,
Here.
and Justin.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance. All right, item number 2, approval of July 30th, 2024 regular council minutes.
This is Crystal and I would move approval.
Todd will second it.
Got a motion, a second. Any additions, corrections, or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Item number 3, council announcements. Any member of the council have anything they'd like to bring up? Cindy?
It's going to be a Main Street public meeting, September 4th at 5 p.m. Where is it going to be, Sarah? Here. Okay. Concerning all the stuff that's going to be happening on Main Street.
Informational meeting. for the public.
Informational meeting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Also, the budget meetings are taking place tomorrow and Thursday. I'm assuming go to the website because they're all listed on there. The times they're going to meet, but they will be also in this room starting at 5 o'clock tomorrow.
Yep. Anything else? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on down to item number 4, which is the first period for public comment. Any members of the public wish to make a comment, now would be the time. If there's anybody online, they're welcome to do so also. It would appear that there's nobody.
I think you're good now.
All right. Moving right along, item number 5, operator license approvals out of public safety.
Okay, we had 5 of them that went before, actually 6 that went to public safety this evening for Kyle Schultz, Michael Baker, Samuel Balto, Shannon Viroqua, Grishella Mickelson, and Nicole Viroqua. They all went through and are fine with their background checks, and public safety forwarded them for your approval.
I move approval. This John.
Steve, I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Item number 6, discussion with possible action on temporary Class B beer license for Wild West Days Little Bridges Rodeo on September 6th through the 8th of 2024. And this is also coming from public safety.
Again, this is September 6th through the 8th. This is what they've had in the past for their Little Britches Rodeo. So they're asking for the temporary Class B beer license. Public safety forwarded it with their approval. So we're looking for your approval.
I'll make a motion. We approve the temporary Class B beer license for the Wild West Days Little Britches Rodeo for all those little kids.
This is Crystal. I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, item number 7, discussion with possible action on temporary Class B beer license for Wild West Days Twinkle Light Village, November 22nd, 23rd, 29th, 30th, and December 6th and 7th, 2024, again from public safety.
This is again, I believe it's their third year that they're having the Twinkle Light Village. They have it for those 3 weekends in a row. And so they're asking for the temporary Class B beer license as well. And Public Safety sent it with their approval on this one as well. Looking for your approval.
Yeah, this is Steve. I'll make a motion. We accept the temporary Class B beer license for Wild West Days Twinkle Light Village on those dates.
And this is Crystal. I'll second.
We got a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Item number 8, review and approval of extraterritorial certified survey map for McClurg Plan Commission.
Okay, this went to Plan Commission last night, and what they're doing here is that I believe it's 4 acres around the house and the garage that they are breaking out from the rest of the parcel, and the current owner will retain the rest of the parcel. So they're just basically mapping this part out. And again, this is off of County Road Y in the extraterritorial area. So it's basically for your information, but it needs to come before you for your information to know what's happening in that area.
Cindy, I make a motion, we approve the certified survey map for McClurg.
And this is Crystal. I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, item number 9, review and approval of plat of survey for Silverthorne Estates, Vic Meyer Wong and Properties LLC. This also came from the Plan Commission.
Okay, this one went to Plan Commission as well last night. There was, when they sent it forward or whatever, it was to review because the one corner of it, I don't know if you have that on there, Nate, was at a 90-degree angle, and they were looking at possibly having it as a curved angle between 6 and 7. And I believe also I found out today that the county surveyor had not seen this yet. So there are still some things that they need to have it reviewed, but I don't know if Sarah do you have any other updates that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so Sarah and I did meet this morning just to talk through it, and there was some I think general confusion and just walking back. As I said in Plan Commission last night, the document that is in front of you is consistent and congruent with what was submitted as part of the preliminary plat, as well as what is called the specific implementation plan, which is sort of the second phase of a plan unit development. Just as a reminder, a plan unit development is basically a creative and unique zoning that we do for special sort of developments that sort of go away from the zoning of an R2 or an R1. And so that's for those of you who remember, it's a very long process. We look at a lot of documents and we sort of approve it as a cohesive zoning in and of itself, right? And so this is the specific implementation plan was sort of the second part of that. And it is, again, consistent with what is shown up here. What you don't see is that the roads will be curved, and that is shown on the specific implementation plan. What this is showing is what the public right-of-way would be. And so, Sarah, I don't know if you want to add to that at this point. But again, from my perspective, this is, again, they've been consistent all along with this as their sort of preliminary plat. The only, I think, difference is that they have included 0 lot lines for 3 of the 4 buildings that's up there in order to make the units be able to be sold and owner occupied. Sarah.
Yeah, I guess when we originally looked at these, I just assumed they'd be fine tuned as the road got defined, and but they left it as this, so not ideal. Joe talked about correcting some of the 6 and 7 later because they own 6, so you might see this again, but it probably doesn't really amount to much change for anything that might change in the future. So good to go.
Thank you. So we are looking to approve this and or answer any questions.
I'll move to approve the survey plat for Silverthorne Estates.
John, I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Now we're gonna go ahead and move items number, let's see here, 11 and 12 ahead of number 10. We've got some folks online that are here for that discussion, so we're gonna bump those up. Then we'll come back to item number 10 if that's all right with everybody. All right, item number 11 then is discussion with possible action on soliciting bids for $158,000 general obligation promissory note to finance 2024 city capital projects.
Okay, so tonight we have Sean Lenz from Ellers. Ellers is our municipal financial advisor. Sean's been working with the city for a long time. And this first item in front of you is talking about borrowing for the end of year capital. So as part of the 2024 budget, we identified a handful of items, things like the squad car, the new K-9 that was discussed, and finance and personnel, a few smaller items for park and rec, as well as the $60,000 for street resurfacing projects that we had to move out of the operating budget into borrowing because of the overages for health insurance, if you all remember. So that's what this is. Sean, can you hear us okay?
I can, Nate. Thank you.
Okay. And if you're okay, I'll drive and you point out the view as we go.
Yeah, I think, Nate, on the note, if you go to the last 2 pages, I think that'll be most informative for the mayor and the council as to what we're looking at. Okay, perfect. Thank you. And good evening, Mayor and Council. What we're looking at is a finance plan for the projects that Nate just alluded to. We're looking at a loan to be paid back over 10 years with a fixed interest rate, callable or prepayable by the city if you want at any time, but the interest rate would be locked in, and you could just pay according to this schedule if that continues to make the most sense. The total payments, principal and interest together, using an interest rate projected somewhere around 5.5% at this point for the pre-sale report, would lead to total principal and interest payments that we'd need to add to the city's budget, to the debt levy portion, starting next year in 2025 of around $21,000 a year to pay it back in full over the 10 years. And if we can go to the next exhibit, Nate. I also wanted to give the council a sense with this financing that will be paid by the city's debt levy, as well as the fire department financing, the fire station that we did earlier this year. This is an exhibit that you've seen before. It looked very much like this, only this is about a titch higher, about 20,000 higher than what we looked at earlier this year when we completed the fire station financing. The column on the far left of the page is the levy for debt service that the city had in 2024. So just over 700,000. And with the fire station financing and the financing, the 158,000 that we're talking about this evening, we expect that to jump up to about 860 or so, starting in 25. It'll stay around that level, and then you'll see it gradually falls over time. This does not include any future capital improvement or project financing that the city may decide to do in the future, pending future capital improvement plans, but it gives you a sense as to where you'll be for your budget in 2025 as compared to 2024. So this evening, what we're looking for, we wanted to just be available for any questions, and then also looking for a motion so that we can solicit bids for the $158,000 issue, which we intend to bring back for your review at the second meeting in September.
Would it be the second or the first meeting, Sean?
Nate, honestly, we could do whichever one that you'd prefer. I think either one would work, given where we're at right now in the process. So whatever works best for you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Before we jump in with questions, one other thing I wanted to point out, and Sean, I didn't have a chance to talk to you today about this, and frankly, it was more of me forgetting. What you see up there is a 10-year promissory note. One of the things we always talk about, and the mayor and I have had a couple conversations about this over the years, is making sure that the duration of our loan doesn't necessarily exceed the lifespan of the items that we are buying with said loan. 10 years for a police canine is probably overestimating the useful life of a canine, Rick, I would imagine. Same thing for squad cars. I mean, again, those things both are out there quite often. Some of the other things, the road resurfacing, absolutely, there's a longevity there. But Sean, I don't know if we can talk about that a little bit, pros, cons of moving this from a 10-year to maybe a 5-year. The problem is we do have some items in there that are definitely, like, some of them would fall into it being appropriate for 10 years, some of them not as much. So wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I think if we feel comfortable that when we blend the projects together, we're paying back the projects on a blended useful life basis over 10 years, I think I'm comfortable with proceeding as is. If the council wants to look at every project individually, though, we can certainly have a amortization schedule for each project that then combines into a total repayment schedule totaling the 158,000 paid back over 10 years. What that would mean, if we're looking at Exhibit 1 right now and changing it, is we would have more principal paid back faster, probably in the first 5 years than we currently do. And that would push up the payments in the first 5 years to a higher level than you're seeing currently. And the payments in the last 5 years would go down a little bit from where they currently are. So maybe the payments in the first 5 years would be 25 to 27,000 total. And then the payments in the last 5 years, instead of being 21,000, would probably be 17 to 18,000 each year, somewhere in that range. But certainly, if from a policy standpoint, the group is a little more comfortable going with each project individually rather than kind of a blended useful life of all the projects we're putting into the pot to be included into this financing. If that's a more comfortable approach, we certainly can make that adjustment. And if there's any questions, happy to talk about it more. But basically, at the end of the day, it'll be a little higher payments in the first 5 years, a little lower payments in the last 5 years, a little less interest overall as well, because you're paying the principal off faster.
And Sean, this would still, all those projects would still be part of one bond issuance.
Yeah, correct. There would be no requirement or reason that we'd have to do multiple issues. We can do separate schedules within the total schedule that you see on Exhibit 1 just for tracking purposes, but it would only be one loan that the city would be issuing here.
Thanks, Sean. Thoughts?
So Cindy, I guess I wonder what your feelings are on having the higher payments up front.
So there's sort of always two thoughts on that. Is one is do we have the debt capacity to handle it? And the answer is yes, we do. I guess there's three. So that's one. The second one is how does it impact any budget limitations that we may have? And there are no, that this is a debt service, and debt service is exempted from any levy limitations, right? So this is an operating budget we're having to worry about staying with through the state. So we have that flexibility in decision making as a city. The third and most important is impact on taxpayers, right? And so when Sean, as he's sort of explained here, tries as much as possible to provide the taxpayers a smooth ride so that there's not these large fluctuations, because I think folks get a little bit more upset when there's these large jumps in the tax levy every year, and the debt service levy being part of that. However, given the fact that the changes he's talking about amount to maybe $70,000 worth of borrowing, it's sort of a blip on there. Sean, to me, it wouldn't seem like it would be a huge impact, especially when you spread it out over the entire tax base. The fire station is one thing. I would see the
Yeah.
jump. $70,000 versus, you know, the 3.3 million we borrowed for the fire station is just a much different thing. So I would, if it was me, and I think I know the mayor's position on this, is I would stick to policy on this and sort of arrange the amortization schedule in such a way that you're paying off the items according to their useful lifespan.
Yeah. And Nate explained my position on it. I don't like us having debt on retired rolling stock. So I think, you know, when you look at that, we replace the squad car in 5 years, we're still paying on it for another 5 plus paying on the new one. That doesn't make me very comfortable. So what kind of action are you looking for? Do you want the council to, I mean, do we want to see another schedule and bring it back? Or are you looking for direction to?
I would say if the council's comfortable and in the interest of sticking to timelines, I would, you know, recommend as your administrator and with Sean sort of backing, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the agenda item now. You know, authorizing the solicitation of bids for the general obligation note according to the amended amortization schedule as discussed. And just trusting in Sean that amortization schedule follows. So I'll work with him and make sure I work with Rick. What's the lifespan of the dog as a canine officer? And what's the lifespan of the vehicle, which we've already kind of talked to, and adjust the schedule accordingly.
Nate, if I may just suggest if it's to do exactly as you say, but we can get that schedule to the council for your meeting next week. I think you've got one on the 27th, as I recall. So you'll see the schedule before the meeting on the 10th where you'd be asked to approve the bids. So if there was a problem with what you see next Tuesday, you certainly just let us know and we'll make an adjustment to that. But we'll get that scheduled to you so you've got it.
Thanks, Sean. We do.
Okay, this is Crystal, and I would move that we solicit bids for the 158 general obligation promissory note to finance the 2024 city capital projects and include the amended amortization schedule that was discussed tonight and have that at our next meeting.
Cindy, I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any other questions, discussion? Roll call, please.
Todd Spaeth,
All right.
Cindy,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
Andrew.
Aye.
Dr. King
All right.
and Emma.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And with that, we'll move on to item number 12, which is discussion with possible action on soliciting bids for a $580,000 taxable general obligation promissory note to acquire property from VDA for development in TID 7.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The second schedule and the second borrowing is related to the land purchase from VDA, just as the mayor had pointed out. Why can't we combine this, you may ask? It certainly would be a good question. This project, because of the nature of it being what the IRS deems as for business purposes rather than for, I guess, what I would call pure governmental purposes, we do not have the ability to use the typical tax exempt borrowing tool for that. So we need to use taxable borrowing. What does that mean to the city? Is that the interest rates have to be higher, all other things equal, because we can't take advantage of that tax exempt status for the borrowing. And again, the reason is that you're buying the land ultimately to sell it to promote development and get development in your tax increment district. And it's just that type of government activity, certainly allowable. No, don't get the impression that it's not allowable. It's done all the time, but it doesn't fall under the category for which you can use tax exempt financing. So what we've put together in order to buy the property from VDA and get them out of the business of holding the property is we put together a financing with a 3-year balloon payment on it, where we would make interest only payments in 25 and 26, and then the balloon payment would be due in 27. Our feeling in discussions, mostly talking with Nate, is that likely the development and sale of this property will occur prior to this point in time, prior to the balloon coming due. So in all likelihood, we will be selling the land, taking the proceeds from that sale and paying off this note in the next year, maybe 2 years. I think Nate would know better than me, in order to get rid of the note at that time. In a worst case scenario where the land does not sell, we would have the ability at a later date to extend this out for repayment over a longer period of time. And we would be able to use tax increment district number 7 revenues to pay for the debt service, should we not again have the proceeds to pay for this acquisition using land sale proceeds. So again, Mayor, what we'd be looking for this evening is just a motion to proceed with soliciting bids, which we'll be bringing back on the same time schedule as the other note. It sounds like at your first meeting in September.
Thank you, Sean. Questions?
So just to add in, as a reminder, we went through a summary at the last meeting to talk about the Hanson Farm timeline that got us to this point, and sort of the deal, sort of the reimbursement plan, right? About how our projections on land sales points us at to around 740, 750 in land sales should everything sell. Once those land proceeds come in, priority 1 is to pay down principal and interest on this issuance. And then anything that's left after that would go back to the VDA in order to pay them back for the down payment that they made on this land. So the total purchase price for the land, I believe, was $650. And they put $130 down in cash out of their coffers and borrowed $520 for the rest of it. And so what is up here is dollars to basically pay off that principal, pay off a portion of that interest, and then also put some money back in the VDA's coffers in the interim so that they can continue conducting business and trying to sell land and things like that. So the VDA met last Thursday to discuss this reimbursement plan. After much discussion, they approved it as well. And so essentially they've agreed with you with the motion that was made at the last council meeting that let's move forward with this agreement. So any questions for that?
We've got a couple newer members. Does everybody understand the VDA and kind of what they do and how they act on behalf of the city? Okay, sure. So the VDA facilitates land sales to developers in the city on behalf of the city. So it's not a private entity. It's not another organization. It's a quasi-government organization, maybe the best explanation, Nate.
Yep. They're a separate entity, but their entire job is to promote economic development on behalf of the city of Viroqua and us alone. So therefore they're considered a quasi-governmental, which really just means that they have to publicly host meetings. They're subject to FOIA requests and things like that.
Sure. I just wanted to make that point just so everybody understands, it's not a developer that bought this that we're, doing it. They came to us even prior to the property and said, if we run out of money before it's sold, will you help us out? And the council agreed to help them out. And that's where we're at right now. So.
And for anybody who was following my math and was like, there's a number missing in there, 20,000 of that, the debt proceeds would also go towards demolition of the large farmhouse, which has already been approved. HBC has looked at it. The building is just unfortunately hasn't been kept up at all, and it's just derelict at this point. So That's what makes it up. The last 5,000 is just the cost of issuance for the services rendered by Ellers and putting this together.
Is there anything else in TID 7? I feel like that's one TID we don't talk about that much.
There's a
so-
lot in TID.
Is there?
7.
All right.
There's a lot. So
Okay.
Aldi is in TID 7.
Cool.
The
That's,
Viroqua Business Park is in TID 7. The Vic Meyer Wangen project is in TID 7.
okay.
Railroad Avenue is in TID 7. It's a big TID,
Good.
geographically speaking.
All right.
All right, questions? If not, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the solicitation.
This is Todd. I move to approve to solicit bids for $580,000 taxable general obligation promissory note to acquire the property from VDA for development in TID 7.
I don't second it. Got a motion and a second. Any other questions? Not roll call, please.
Cindy?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Crystal?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Seth?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Dr. King?
Aye.
Emma?
Aye.
And Todd Spade.
Aye. All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sean.
Yep, thank you, Mayor and Council, and we'll get that updated repayment schedule to you for your meeting next week.
Sounds great. Thank you. With that, we'll move on back to item number 10, which is discussion with possible action on a request for property purchase adjacent to Bigley Parkland with Daryl Skrupke, and this is coming from Park and Rec.
So Daryl. Daryl's with us here tonight. He can sort of speak his piece to that. Daryl, did you get a copy of that letter back? Okay, perfect. Kay was able to get that to you. I'm going to go just for the purposes of letting everybody know what we're talking about, put the land in question up on the map here. So as you can see, this is Bigley Park, the entrance to the Park Bowl, the shelter that sits right there. And these two pieces of property, or at least a portion of this property and all of this parcel make up the land sort of in question, if I'm understanding this correctly. Daryl's property sits right up here. And this is what's being requested. Park and Rec has had 2 conversations now at their committee meetings regarding Daryl's request. And I don't know if I could hand it over to you and you can sort of, in quick summation, sort of share what you're asking for and why you're asking for it.
Thank you, Nate. I appreciate that. I don't know about being quick, but I'll do my best. And for me, this is a big deal, as I've mentioned to the Park and Rec Committee before, and it goes back approximately 30 years. So it's pretty complex, and I need to explain several circumstances that are rather unique. When I met my wife, Mary, back in 92, 93, she was residing in front of her house on the property that we're talking about. And when we met, we did a lot of landscaping, and the adjacent landowner, Gary Hall, owned the apartment building on the north side, and his parking lot extended. You can see the red line there. And at that time, it didn't look anything like it does now. It was full of thistle, box elder, juniper. And so Mary wanted to landscape it. She was the owner. We were dating at that time. And I said, well, I'll be more than willing to help you. Let's talk to Gary Hall. He, in short, said, I don't care what you do with it. I don't know exactly where the property line is, but anything you do is going to be better than the mess that's there now. Whatever you do, just take care of it. So we started landscaping. I cut down numerous trees. We ended up having the fire department come and controlled burn on the brush pile, so we wouldn't damage the oak trees back up on the rock. And we hauled out 2 dump trucks full of boulders. And we hauled in, I think Mr. Hoggy, who just recently passed away, brought in the black dirt, and we started our landscaping project. That was in 92, 93 when we were dating. Eventually, I was able to convince Mary that we needed to get married, which we did. And in 94, we kind of expanded the house add-ons and started working more around the rock. In front of the rock, there was lots of ditch lily, which eventually I dug out, and that brought me around the edge of the rock. So on the property next to the rock, I started putting in trails. Trails were made out of brick and stone, and people in the neighborhood, once they found out what I was doing, would bring and drop off materials that I could use. As I looked down that hillside, I was curious about who owned that property, and you couldn't walk down that hillside without falling down because it was all solid rock and there was little pebbles on there and you would slip and fall the whole time. But anyway, I contacted Dave Jenkins, city attorney at that time, and let him know that I was curious about who owned that property. He said, well, I will do some research on that. And he got out his city maps with town range and section, went through all of that. Eventually, he came to the property and we walked through it, and he explained to me that Bigley white fence was the center of the street across South Street, which is, I don't know that that's shown on there, but the white fence is actually the center of the abandoned road right-of-way. And that road right-of-way is defined by the center of that fence. And since I was the adjacent landowner, he said, that property is yours. You do what you want with it. Consider it yours and have at it, which I did. Eventually, then I developed steps, intertwining upper, middle, lower steps, eventually retaining walls and cement poured steps, which I'll get into later. But a few years later, I heard a chainsaw going back there. So I investigated, and Terry Syme was back there, who was Park and Rec director at that time. And they were beginning to cut brush and potentially trees. So I asked him, if he knew exactly where the property line was, and that I thought he was approaching, the property that I owned. And I asked him to contact Dave Jenkins, the city attorney at that time, and then get back to me about where the line and who owned what was. Eventually, a few days later, he came back and he indicated that he, a little bit of vagueness there, but had a conversation with Dave Jenkins, and they offered to purchase the property from me, which I was not interested in them doing. And then they offered to lease the property from me for $1 to take away the liability. And I told Terry that I had an umbrella policy that had liability insurance, and I really wasn't interested in selling it, or leasing it. And would you kind of remove the brush that you've cut down, and then if you could give me some private property, no trespassing signs, that would be great. And I requested 3, which they gave me. Those 3 signs are still up on the property. So that allowed me to extend developing the property. I really didn't take care of it. I developed it. Eventually, I put in 87 steps of poured concrete. I found a way to zigzag back and forth down the hillside and dig a little trench, put cement in, tear off hosta leaves that we had planted, reverse them to stamp the concrete, and I carried that cement up the hillside in 5-gallon pails over several years. I planted numerous hosta, the total of which now is approximately 500 species of hostas and other perennials. I've put in 2 large retaining walls on the end towards Bigley Park, and I have 4 smaller retaining walls, the largest at the bottom and then smaller as you go up between the rock and the steps that I've poured in. I've planted numerous trees. I have 8 spruce trees that have survived, 4 oak trees, 4 tamarack trees, and hundreds of hostas. I've spent thousands of hours in that backyard. I've believed that it's mine, and I've spent thousands of dollars on sculptures, trees cutting down, cement statues, metal statues. So there's quite a bit of time and effort that's been invested in that. Then several years ago, I thought that I needed a deed to the property, and I contacted Sarah and asked her if she could investigate and find out how I could get a deed to that property. So the end story of that, to make a long story short, was the attorney, Hopkins, I believe, came back and said, no, the city owned that property. So we were in a disagreement. I went back to Dave Jenkins, who at that time, unfortunately, was declining in health. And he said, well, another approach might be to try to work with the city. So I submitted a letter to the city council to purchase the property in writing. And the person that I talked to indicated to me that the first thing that Park and Rec and the city council would need to know is if any of the adjacent landowners were interested in purchasing that property. So I contacted Jim Salto to the south, Pam and Dr. Kalinowski as well, and Keith Rockowitz, who owned the apartment building to the north. They all indicated they were not interested in the property. I wrote a letter to the city council indicating that, providing the names, telephone numbers, date, etc. So that started the process of a formal deed for the property. Then at that time, Boone was, Stolzberg was Park and Rec director, and he had indicated he was going to retire. So I never talked to Boone. My recollection is I never had a conversation with him, but the people in City Hall told me that because Boone was retiring, that likely wasn't going to get dealt with, that I would have to wait till there was a new Park and Rec director, which I did, and that turned out to be Cale. And so when Cale was hired, I contacted Cale about trying to resolve the issue of this property that I believed I owned and the city believed they owned. So Cale came over and we walked the property, I believe with Nate Noggle. And Cale and I are in a little bit of disagreement because I believe at the end of the conversation, it was indicated that in other circumstances, the city had agreed under different circumstances to sell property for $1. But he also indicated that he was new and he needed some time to get a plan and wanted to develop a comprehensive plan. So could I wait a year to give a chance for him to get his feet on the ground, so to speak? So a year later, that seemed reasonable. So I thought, well, I can do that. I've waited this long. So a year later, I contacted Cale and I don't recollect if we went on the property or not, but anyway, he had a kind of change of pace in that he said we needed this comprehensive plan to deal with such an issue. And I said, well, you're not going to find a comprehensive plan that deals with the circumstances that's unique to this property. I believe that I've owned it and have taken care of it for approximately 30 years, and I've developed it. Dr. Kalinowski and his wife are the adjacent landowners, and that fence is kind of the border of their property, which is the center of the street. And for a street that size, typically the road right away is 4 rods, 2 rods on each side, 66 feet, which clearly goes into their yard, and they're the beneficiaries of that abandoned road right away. I'm the other adjacent landowner and consequently would like to be treated the same. more recently, the city has agreed to, in the works, sell a strip of property between the driveway of the high rise to the pool. My understanding is for $1. And I'm just asking to be treated the same, even though I believe I still own that property. I have done numerous garden tours. People are more than welcome to the property. Town and Country Garden Club, Shades of Green Garden Club, Red Hat Ladies, impromptu garden tours all throughout the summer, 2-3 days a week, 2 people, 12 people, it doesn't make any difference. I'm more than happy to share the yard and the backyard with people. And it does bring people from out of town to our area, our community, and they are so excited to come because there's so many things to do in Viroqua, and they spend their money here. I might add also that Terry's first idea about having some of those trees cut was to open up the area because there were people coming up, mostly kids from the park down below, and the liability is falling on the rocks, slipping, and several times they would fall and wreck a plant that I'd spent $40, $50 on with no regard. Also, back in the day when the pool was in action, there was a lot of students drinking pop. It was break time. They'd go to the back of the rock and sit, and then they'd throw their pop bottle. And there's all kinds of glass. I was still picking glass up today that gets washed and exposed. So at the last 2 meetings ago, the first meeting that I had with Park and Rec, it was suggested if I could get Terry Syme to corroborate that that conversation did occur and that the city did indeed try to purchase the property from me, that would more or less kind of take care of things. And as a result of that, the vote was in favor of selling that property to me for $1, and I'm here to urge you to approve that. But I would like to read the letter that Terry Syme wrote. This letter is dated to, and you should have a copy of it, Viroqua Parks and Rec Committee, the Viroqua City Council, and a copy sent to me, Daryl Scruppy. And this is from KT Syme, Viroqua Parks and Rec Director. And he was director in 1996 to 2003. It says, to whom it may concern. I have been asked to write this letter of events that happened over 20 years ago. My memory is somewhat vague on the details of such, but I will do the best I can. Just southeast of the warming house at the Park Bowl lies a small hill with rock outcroppings. At this time, kids were going up there and doing who knows what. So our intention was to open it up so it could be more visible. We cleaned brush and cut down dead or dying trees. During this endeavor, the landowner to the east, Daryl Scruppy, approached us saying that we were either on his property or close to it. He was concerned that by opening it up, we would have more kids up there playing and horsing around. Liability was a factor. If I recall correctly, we stopped what we were doing and cleaned up the brush that had been cut. We purchased 3 private property, no trespassing signs, and placed them on what we thought was a property line. I was Parks and Rec Director from 1996 to 2003. I believe that the above happened around 1997. I do remember a discussion on who owned what and where the property line was. This discussion was between the park committee, Roger Hatlam was chair, and to the then city attorney, Dave Jenkins, and Mr. Scruppy. I was not involved in this discussion. I do vaguely remember a proposal to buy the property from Mr. Scruppy, but again, I was not involved in this. Again, this was over 20 years ago. Memories fade. Perhaps checking with Park and Rec Committee minutes would be helpful. Sincerely, R. Terry Syme, dated 8/5/24. So to me, this certainly corroborates that although things may not have been done in the past the way they are done today, the intent was certainly acknowledge that I owned the property, that it was mine, and I have been dealing with that as if it were mine. And again, I've spent thousands of hours and a few $1,000s cutting trees, putting sculptures back there for people to enjoy. And I would urge you to approve the recommendation made by the Park and Rec Committee. I would be more than happy to answer any questions you might have, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daryl. Questions specifically for Daryl?
Since that Park and Rec committee, when we approved the purchase, have we defined that property more adequately? Because it was somewhat.
Yep. So, you'll see,
I didn't recall the blue box, so I think that's improved.
Is specifically what Daryl is requesting. And so it's essentially two portions of land, and I'm gonna try to do it without, well, I could probably just get rid of the marker here. Let's see. So if you can see, I know the red lines are a little faint, but this property here in its entirety, and then this rectangle here, except where it sort of crosses the property line behind Keith Rockowitz's building. So that would be the one section that Daryl was not interested in. There was some conversation at Park and Rec about maybe not needing the property further west where it sort of comes down off the rocks. In conversations between Kale, and you may need to speak for yourself on that. It sounds like you have things down there as well. And so the sort of, again, the request is for this entire section plus this, and really the only part that wouldn't be included is this small portion here.
Thank you for that.
So I'll speak, and if Kale wants to come up, he can, and I'll just reiterate what I said with the Park and Rec Committee. One is that in looking at the deed, the city owns the property. It's not really, in my opinion, up for debate who owns the property. There was never any legal transaction that ever took place that transferred ownership of the property to Daryl. Two is that David Jenkins has no authority to unilaterally cede property from the city to an adjacent landowner. What he may or may not have told Daryl sounds accurate, and I'm happy to trust Daryl that he said something to that effect, but whether he said, yep, it's your property, go ahead and use it, nobody really knows. There's no document anywhere that shows that. Now, I don't want to take away from the fact that Daryl clearly has made a very compelling argument as to why the city should consider, selling the land to him. However, my recommendation to the council is that I don't think you should consider that as you have to. You still have a choice. And what I would weigh that against is whether or not there's a potential for that property to be used for recreational purposes in the future by the public at large, and not just one individual landowner. Granted that Daryl has been very good about opening up his property to anybody who's interested, and that's very commendable. Kale and I's position, as we've talked about this over the last 16 months or so, has been, it's not a no from us. It's a, can you please just wait until we do a comprehensive outdoor recreation plan or recreation plan so that we know for sure before we sell the land whether or not it's not of some future public use. That's been our position all along. But again, I can't deny that Daryl makes a very compelling point as to why he is requesting this at this point. He certainly put a lot of time and sweat equity into the property. I had one more thought. I don't know what it was, but I'm sure what I've said already is probably hopefully more than enough. If you have any questions for I or Kale, we're happy to weigh in.
Thank you, Nate.
And we are essentially looking for a motion to continue the forwarded from the Parks and Rec to constitute that sale to Daryl.
That's what the recommendation was, yeah.
So that the council could certainly approve it as it is, could make amendments to, could adjust it in some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
So what I'll say is that a couple things is, Daryl referenced the deal we had with the Viroqua Housing Authority for a strip of land that was between us and them. I would just encourage everybody that every deal is different, that precedent is only set when you allow it to be. And especially with deals like this, you always want to weigh in, like, what is the public interest? And for the Viroqua Housing Authority, there's a much different public interest than there is here. That was a relationship with essentially another public entity in order to buy the landowner. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It's just there's a different consideration there.
I know from several years past that whenever there was an alley or a street that was vacated, it maybe was on an old map and it never got, that alley or street never got used, that it was offered to the adjacent landowners free or for $1. I'm not sure. I'm sure, John, you know of several of these alleyways and streets that's happened to in the city. So since that street, of course, never took place, and obviously Kalinowski's property took ownership of the right side of that Garfield right away, that never happened. I don't see why we wouldn't just continue that on up through there. I know of several places in town over the years that they've done that. So I don't think it's setting a precedence. It's very similar to several streets and alleys that have been, and railroad right-of-ways and things like that have taken place in the past. So I'm for,
Sorry, Todd.
allowing Daryl to continue ownership of the property.
Clarify, what happens when that street gets vacated is that it goes back to the properties from which it was created. And in most cases, like if you look at how a subdivision, they'll take half and half from each side. And so then typically it goes back to where it was created. So there's certainly precedent for that, but it would go like half and half. The problem, or not the problem, but the different uniqueness in this is that it never came from the adjacent property. The property that was platted, where the Bigley plazas and that kind of thing, it came all from that same area. And so that's why when the county surveyor looked through it, he's like, this is entirely the city's, it's not split in half. So that's just something to think about, just so you understand the origin. It was just the fact that it never came from the plat that, I don't know the name of it, that Rock Avenue is on. It came from the plat elsewhere. So.
And so in review by the city attorney, Todd, sort of what you just got at doesn't hold in this situation.
Cindy's had something I'd like to get. Huh? Oh, you are?
Well, I
Oh.
thought maybe Todd made a motion.
No, I didn't make a
No.
Oh. Because I'd make the motion that we sell the property adjacent to Bigley Park land to Daryl for $1.
Got a motion?
This
there a
is Seth.
second?
I'll second that.
All right. Got a motion and a second. We can certainly continue on with discussion. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I guess. So I voted for this in Parks and Rec because I wanted to come here, because I wanted everybody to experience this, but it was definitely Nate and Kale made the recommendation that we don't sell land until we know for a fact that it doesn't serve our community. This has been told to us that it's our community's land, which means it's your land, your land, your land, my land, your land, right? I understand someone told you 30 years ago it was yours, but it just seems like if we, and I made the comment before, what does another 6 months, year matter if it's been 30 years and there's still been no, I guess, definite answer. So I still think we should wait until the park master plan has been made. And then at that point, if it benefits the city, like have another discussion. If it doesn't benefit the city, it'll probably be more than likely we'd get rid of it. So that's my personal opinion.
If we're sharing some personal opinions, not that I'm a lawyer, but Wisconsin does have a state statute of adverse possession. And then after 20 years of maintaining a property line, it can get titled to the person who has possessed that land for that 20 years. And I am just thinking that this is a scenario where that property, if you've been by it, would be a lot of money to remove rocks to make, unless they use that as the recreational, but it just wanted that out there that it has been maintained for that time, so.
Sarah, is that correct? Because I thought,
So. No, I'll jump in. Adverse possession doesn't matter when it's municipality.
Okay, thank you.
So that's kind of not the same thing. But
I appreciate
we
you
looked at that.
clarifying
City
that.
attorneys looked into that. I agree with Steve. I'll point out two things, and I finally circle back and remember what I was going to say. Daryl, do you remember why Terry Syme and the rest of the Park and Rec folks asked to buy the land from you?
That they had the conversation with Dave Jake, who confirmed with them that I own the property.
Right.
Sorry, he's got to speak into the mic.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Daryl. You got to go up to the microphone. I was like, "What are you pointing?" It's like, gotcha.
My understanding was that they had a conversation, in this case, apparently Dr. Hatlum and Park and Rec Committee. And they came back with a proposal to purchase the property, acknowledging that the conversation with Dave Jenkins and the committee wanted to purchase the property because I owned it. Things were done differently back then. When this first came out and other people found out about it, Dave Triggerstead was quite upset, and he came to my house and walked the property and walked down there. And he came back and his very words were something to this extent. When Dave Jenkins said that that was your property, damn it, back then, that's what the deal was. And that's kind of the tone that Dave had. And he was really upset. Things may not have been done the way you do them today, but there was no questioning the intent and the ownership. And sorry for the language, but.
No,
So just before you jump in, Cindy, the reason I bring that up is clearly at some point then the city wanted the land, even though it should have known that it owned it. There was interest in the city owning the land. So I just want to point that out, that if there was interest in the city owning the land back then, there might be interest in the city owning the land now. The second thing I'll say is you talk about kids on rocks, right? Natural play structures, rocks are a feature that a lot of parks are incorporating. There's entire national parks that are built on scrambling up rocks and stuff like that. And so while I appreciate the liability conversation, that's not to say that that's sort of proof in the pudding that there may be a recreational benefit to owning that property. Okay, so again, just sort of playing devil's advocate a little bit, again, you can clearly tell that I'm more cautious about letting go of city land. The last thing I'll say is that I would highly suggest that you, if you do sell it, that you alter your dollar amount. Okay, we're trying to build park projects. We have needs as a city, and if we're going to be letting go of an asset to a private individual, I think there should be some sort of compensation back to the city in order to further the public cause and maybe some other space. So just a couple other things to think about this, where maybe there's some win-wins to be had here.
Can
Cindy,
Can I just say, oh,
it's up to, she was pushing her button when Nate started, so I want to make sure that we.
I'm with Steve on this as far as having a due process. And that the two things that came up for me, which is if we sold it, like your story is very compelling and it's sort of heartbreaking to listen to it. So I don't want you to feel like I don't understand the desire to like hold on to something that you care about. And that's really comes through. But I also, like, as a city representative, I need to be able to explain to the public if this comes through what the process was. It can't be taken lightly because that's my responsibility. I'm also just as a parent of small children where would love to have more climbing green spaces at the school, or we're trying to raise money for the Eckerd Park build. Like in my mind, like when I think about this, I don't want to lose the opportunity for that enjoyment. So I'm on the side of just waiting and that there may be an opportunity to have more of a collaborative solution personally with more information.
Thank you, Cindy.
I just want to say in fairness to Daryl, who's worked very hard on this land for 30 years, and it is open to the public. I think that it's just the right thing to do to sell it to him. Okay, if you want to sell it for more than $1, but not much more. He's worked very hard and put a lot of money into it already.
If, do you mind if I go first, Crystal? I agree that with everything that everybody has said, it's unfortunate that it happened the way it did 30 years ago. And to me, land's been conveyed by title for many, 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 many years. So the fact that there was an assumption of land conveyance without title work being done and change of ownership and deeds is hard for me to agree that 30 years ago things were done significantly differently, because I don't believe that they were. And I'm not discrediting what you're saying, but the point about it being open to the public, it isn't that. I mean, there's no trespassing signs hung there. It is not open to the public. It's open to folks through the person who's controlling it, allowing them. And there's a difference. So I'm not disagreeing, but there's a difference between free play on a rock structure versus having to communicate with a landowner to access a property.
My understanding is if you go through if your garage door is open, that area is open to the public.
Everyone in town knows that.
I don't
Just don't come in from the other direction where there are no trespass.
Sure.
Maybe
There's a difference. There is a difference between a public property and a personally owned property that is allowed access. I'm not trying to discredit your argument, but there is a difference, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. Sorry, Crystal. Sorry, can you turn your mic on?
Probably good. Daryl's been caring for this property and improving it for a long time as if it were his. And I think this is our opportunity to make this right. And if anybody should pay anybody, I think the city would have to look at paying him for the improvements that he's made. So that's just my personal feeling.
Thank you.
What kind of cost is there going to be if you're chopping off a piece of that? Does there have to be a certified survey map done? Because you're now taking and dividing up properties. So there's going to be another cost involved in this, just to make you guys aware of that.
I would include in my motion that he pays for that certified survey.
Cindy, I guess I would recommend that if it goes through and the dollar amount to sale is set, that would be in addition to all costs associated with the sale of the property, not just the certified survey map.
Okay.
I would not be comfortable having it not be that way, but that's just my
That's
opinion.
okay.
One comment I'll make to Cindy's thing is that title survives people, and that what Daryl does with the land that he owns while he owns it is one thing, but what happens to the property after Daryl's gone? And I think part of the reason is why this is coming up and time sensitive is Daryl's trying to button everything up. Is that correct, Daryl? And so if it's the case that we want to consider it public property that's open to people coming in, let's talk about a public access easement down into that space then, right? If that's truly what we're talking about and we want to secure that as a space to be enjoyed by the public, let's have an access easement or some sort of recreational easement on that property, right? And then it's a covenant that follows the land. Right?
I guess I'd want to know what Daryl feels about that.
Well, I'm glad you asked. I was waiting to make some comments. First of all, the Kalinowskis benefited from that road abandonment as adjacent landowners. I see no difference between them and myself with that fence. It has been a visual border for the Bigley Park. I've never, and I don't know that anybody really ever considered that hillside part of Bigley Park, except for Terry Syme at one time. And the people who let their children wander up there were not very attentive, and they were rather young and unsupervised. The liability with the glass was a real issue, and them slipping and falling because several did. So I hope you appreciate the liability that is there as well. I've also mentioned to Cale about the boulder that's crushed the rock that's supporting it, the trees that are ready to fall down on Kalinowski's. Matter of fact, there was one black locust which get root rot. It was about, and I'm not exaggerating, about this big around, and it fell down, but parallel to their fence. But there are several others that are going to need to be cut. That's an expense or something that if the city takes over that they need to be aware of. Kale and I walked the property just a couple days ago. The jewel weed is taller than I was trying to walk through there. So it's not like it's inviting people to walk up through there. And again, most people have never ever considered it part of Bigley Park. The far end to the north, it seemed to make sense that there's a pathway from the parking lot down the Park Bowl that, you know, that part of the property and an extension of Keith Rockowitz, I'm not interested in. And I understand what you're saying about usage of property for as many as possible. And I've always had that as a underlying major part of all the garden tours that I do, formal or non-formal. And when we had the last 2 years of formal garden tours, I had 104 people come, and they came as adults. I provided them with walking sticks so they didn't have to worry about slipping and falling. I can answer questions that they have about the geology. So it's not that, and I would mind people coming up from down below as long as it's acknowledged that it's not Bigley Park, that it's, I have an 8-foot sign that I just had made that says Skrupke Bennett Gardens in memory of my wife. And that's what it is. It's gardens for people to enjoy as many as possible all the time.
Sure. Yep.
It's more of actually a question for Kale, because I was just thinking about the property that's up the hill from Eckhart Park. And so, I mean, as far as risk and danger, I mean, there's like essentially cliffs up there. Children have been hurt pretty badly sledding there. I mean, I think some of the space has been changed. I'm just curious because when kids are at Eckhart, they do go up, they do know that that's an extension of that area. And so from like a safety, I know that the liability thing keeps coming up, but when I think as a parent, there's way more liability going on at the top of Eckhart Park than there is at this space. So I'm just kind of curious, like how the city responds to liability issues like that, because most of the time if there's like a social event at Eckhart Park, kids are up there, you know, and there's some decent drops. I don't know. I don't think anybody's ever been hurt, but besides sledding.
Falls under the general
Yeah.
city liability. So we don't post any signs at Eckhart. It's kind of use it. They know the consequences of, you know, playing on those structures. So this would be the same type of area.
Thank you. Daryl.
The part of the property that's not in contention that I have, the drop off is at least 20 feet straight down. So if you open it up and the city believes that it's park and they need to be climbing, it is a very real liability. And for a significant distance, it could easily slip and fall, and just so you're aware.
Thank you.
Justin?
Yeah.
How long, Kale? How long would it take to do this comprehensive plan for the park?
Well, we're hoping to, as Nate, I think would say, if it's going to bid this end of this year, and then the park plan shouldn't take too long. I would say 6 to maybe a year. So it should be done the end of 2025.
Okay. I think we should wait at least that long until that's done. It's been 30 years. What's another 6 months gonna matter?
I would say it's because he's worked on this land. I don't think the city should decide that they want it. After he was told by the city attorney, it was his, you know, if Dave Jenkins had said it's yours, you'd figure he knows what he's talking about. And nobody stopped him all this time.
I don't
and doing
disagree
all
that I
that
think
work.
some things were handled poorly. I'm curious, and Daryl spoke an awful lot, and I don't want to pressure him with questions like this, but to me, investing in a property that you don't hold title to has to come with some sense of a potential risk of someday that might come to light. And I don't know if it did or didn't, but when Kalinowski's was conveyed to them, was that conveyed to them from the city or the previous owner? Do you know that, Sarah? But it clearly has been conveyed to them. Can you turn the mic on?
I'm not exactly sure how all of that went, and I would want to research it. Like,
Sure.
that's what the county surveyor did. He went back to like 18, I don't even know what, and looked through every step of the way. And so I really would need to look. I'm not 100% sure because, again, even if it was the half and half, it doesn't all add up quite right. Like, I'd want to know exactly how the Kalinowskis came to be.
And that's my question is when did that happen, to try to get some sort of a time reference if it happened 80 years ago, and that's why nobody around when this was discussed thought to change it or whatever. But all right, Cindy.
We have, people think they own land all the time, and then when a survey's done, they discover they don't. I mean, it's not that unusual.
That's true, but when
They
they
have-
discover they don't, they're not automatically given title to it.
No, but they've worked, I remember it came up on West Maple Street and back behind, what's her name's house? They had that those lilac bushes, and they did them, and they owned them by George, and it was all that thing about the fence. Remember all that hullabaloo? Maybe it was before you, Nate, but
I don't
so
disagree that it's an
I
unfortunate
can see it
situation. I just want to.
happened, and I think that just in fairness to him, you know.
Yeah, and we have a
future-
motion and a second,
and
so I
get
think.
get your land surveyed, you know, because I had my land surveyed, and I had somebody's driveway is on one end of my land, and somebody had built a shed on the other end of my land. So, you know, it happens.
Do we need to have an official amendment to that motion, as we've kind of talked in passing about how Daryl will need to incur all of the costs along with this transfer?
That's up to
How
the
that
council. I
functions.
mean, there's a motion and a second that ultimately we'll vote on. So if there's changes that are interested in being made.
I can make a change to my motion,
Mm-hmm.
correct? To add the additional costs that might come, but I still would like to stay with the dollar myself, because I don't know how much he's going to incur of other costs. So
And I will still second that motion.
More discussion? Yeah, we will do a roll call on this one. So if everybody's content with the discussion, we'll move on to that.
John,
No.
Crystal,
Yes.
Steve,
No.
Seth,
Yes.
Andrew,
No.
Todd Kirking,
Yes.
Emma,
No.
Todd Spade,
Yes.
and Cindy.
I
5 yeses, 4 noes.
Very good. Thank you for everybody's time. I know that was a long road, and I would assume we'll be in touch, Daryl, to move through the process. Thank you. Sorry, this went to sleep on me. Where we're at. Number 13, item number 13, discussion with possible action on fiduciary agreement with Viroqua Area Foundation for Eckhart Park Project Fundraising Park and Rec. And I don't know who wants to take it, but Angie's been sitting there and Kim's been sitting there, and I bet Angie would love to take this one. You push the person. There you
Yeah,
go.
there we go. I'm a person. So actually, that isn't why I'm here, but I am happy to speak to this. We have the Viroqua Foundation has worked with the city on multiple projects. We are 501c3. It's a way for someone to make a donation, and if they, depending on how they file their taxes, they can write it off. We take care of all of the letters that go out. We thank every person that makes a donation, whether it's 5 cents or $500,000. We enjoy working with the city. We enjoy doing providing pass-through funds so that we can work on projects that improve quality of life in our community. We are working with the bathhouse group through the city, and we have an agreement with them at this point. We've worked on, gosh, the library, skate park, many projects. Eckhart Park is something that needs to be redone. I'm on the committee. Kim is here as well. Many of you are involved in that project, and we want it to be rebuilt to serve our community into the future. If you have questions for me, happy to answer anything. We're audited annually by an outside, Johnson Block audits us. We are compliant. We have our certificate and licensure to be a 501c3. And anything you want to know, happy. We're about 3.2 million to 3.5 million in assets. As an organization, we will give away at least $160,000 from investments that we've made this year. And that doesn't count what we give through pass-through funds. We stereotypically give whatever, we charge a 1% annual fee. We stereotypically give that back. The foundation has already agreed, though, to give $5,000 this year to Eckhart Park and $5,000 next year to Eckhart Park for the project, which will surpass the annual fee regardless of what that is. Any questions?
Thank you, Angie. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, no,
Maybe Nate
I'm
wanted to take
wanting
that
you
one.
to, I'm here for you to approve moving forward the project and hearing that you're going to approve that on a side note.
So I
Thanks,
have,
Angie.
I worked with Angie, and just, I had a few questions regarding the language, and my concerns have been satiated, and this is the agreement that Viroqua Foundation uses. It was very similar to what we use with the bathhouse. And yeah, I don't see any reason why we don't move forward with this agreement for them acting as a fiduciary.
Something that bothers me, and I've heard other people comment on it, is we're calling it the Eckhart Park Reconstruction Project. Aren't we only doing the Dragon Park?
Fair enough.
I really wish they'd say that, because there are people concerned that we're going to be, making major changes to Eckhart Park.
So that's interesting. So my kids called it the rocket ship park. So it's very interesting, with the survey that went out about the park, what people call it. And it's Eckhart Park because that's actually what the park is. What people call it on their own may perhaps be a little bit different, but the signage out there says Eckhart Park. We've actually had this conversation. And if you want it called something different, that's fine, but people call it different things.
Right. So I think what Cindy might be saying, and I think we're all maybe saying the same thing, specifically, it's the Eckhart Enchantment Playground.
Mm-hmm.
The reconstruction doesn't include the larger park grounds, right? And it doesn't include the shelters or the pathways or any of that other stuff. It's just for right now, right?
Yeah. Andrew, our online alder, cannot hear you speaking. I am terribly sorry. So Lori keeps me on the straight.
So one of the reasons to call it Eckhart Park is perhaps with that, that 5-year plan that moves forward, there could be some additional things that may or may not happen that this could encompass that, and fundraising could encompass it. So why narrow your scope when you really don't have your 5-year plan of what Park and Rec is going to do, whereas this could perhaps be part of it or not.
Thanks again, Angie. Does that make sense, Cindy?
Feel like it's turning into a different project.
Well, so it could, I think the only change would be to change it to the Eckhart enchantment. But then to Angie's point, if you raise more than we need, we want to add a slide 50 feet over, now it's outside of that footprint. Right. Right. We'd have to come back.
Always a way.
Yeah, well, certainly.
Frankly, I don't think it really matters. I think if I were to have to pick a side, I would pick Angie's side as the sort of the fundraising guru on the steering committee. I would stick with what she says and just keep it broader. So that way, what people may be able to give. I do agree with Cindy that scope creep is a real sometimes concern with projects. But I think there's other ways to control that than in this agreement, right? Ultimately, the council is going to have control about what the scope of the project is, the design and other elements. And so I think you can avoid getting too crazy with it and having to get out of sorts through those methods, where this one, again, I would just, me personally, I would defer to Angie on this one.
Thanks. Kim's up. I don't know if you, to
I'm just
follow
gonna add
kind of
one-
order, I don't know if you're part
Well,
of.
I am, but I'm not part of the foundation.
You're
I'm
part of the next
Ed
item.
Kirk. I just wanted to add, though, I did do a presentation at the library last week, and Angie is gonna write, Sina is gonna write a comprehensive article for the paper. So I think that would cover all those things. I just wanted to point out that we are trying to make sure people understand what we're doing. But we've had discussion about the slide that is outside of that area that was originally kind of part of that. It just stayed there when that was done. So I think, you know, if you don't care that it's the whole thing, because I do think there's potential, you know, possibly to do other things. But again, that has to be approved by you. And the next thing is the narrower scope when you get to Leather's contract.
Right. Steve.
I'm going to go ahead and make the motion that we agree to use the Viroqua Area Foundation as our fiduciary for Eckert Park project.
This is
Yeah,
Emma,
I'll
and
second. Oops, sorry.
Got a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Not, we'll do a roll call.
Crystal? Aye. Steve?
Aye.
Seth?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Todd Kirking?
Aye.
Emma?
I
Todd Spade?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
And John?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for that. Item number 14 is also in regards to the park. So we'll do that. And then after that, we'll take a short break.
Come on, Todd, you do it.
You're not the only one. So item number 14 is discussion with possible action on Leathers and Associates agreement for Eckhart Park project from Park and Rec.
Okay. Kale can come up. Sorry. I think there's 3 of you here. Somebody wants to do it.
So again, to continue to move this project forward, we're looking at bringing to you guys a proposal for just the design aspect of the project. We're asking to start the design to help the community get to know what we're doing for the project, help the fundraising part of the leadership team get out there and start fundraising, just to kind of continue to get this project to the next step. So you can see on the screen that, again, this amount is just for the design fee, which includes a number of different things. The first drawing, we give them our feedback from the survey that we took about a month ago. The key criteria that the leadership committee that wants, so number of slides, play like what do we want and need, and then what the community wants. So they'll design that with the first first design, and then they give us about 2 to 3 weeks or a week or two. I can't remember the timeline of it. Then we come back, and if there's different things that we see from that, then they take that and that gives them the final drawing. So there's a number of things that we're still working with Leathers. I'm in contact with them. I was in contact with them today to ask some questions. So it's not completely ironed out, but hopefully this gives us the, you know, the blueprint so we can continue to get this project going. Because we would like to start fundraising and talking to the community. September 1st, we were hoping for, because after September 1st, we do a design reveal for their final drawing and really push what to the community, what we see. So up there again, you can kind of see the final rendering, the working drawings, the PIP, that's the protective surfacing rubber. We probably, again, wouldn't do the whole playground in that, but bits and pieces to incorporate all inclusiveness with accessibility to all children. And I know, Nate, you might have some things to share too.
Yeah, so from a financial aspect, this was something that was discussed with Park and Rec as part of the capital improvement plan from 2019 to 2024. There was an allocation of funds to Eckert Enchantment Playground, to the tune like $75,000 or so. At that time, that money in 2019 was believed to be, was going to be used to refurbish the park, replace elements as needed. As we got farther into it, we were really concerned about throwing money at a playground that just wasn't going to survive much longer, and ask the question, would that money be better spent going towards a full reconstruction? We had a report done, and that was the path. And so we sort of pivoted off spending that money in the CIP cycle of 2019 to 2024. But that means that money has already been allocated and is available and is approved for this contract. So it falls within the plans we've already made. The other thing I'll say is that if you do approve, I would recommend you approve contingent on final review by our city attorney. I've had George looking at this, and we've been trying to work through this for a bit here, but the method in which the Leathers and Associates works, we just want to make sure that how they plan to do the project and what their standard mode of operation is congruent with Wisconsin's public bidding rules, especially with regards to the materials and things like that. So we just have to check some boxes. Kale and I had a discussion today. If Mark Leathers from Leathers and Associates hasn't been contacted already, just to firm up a few things, but I would really hate us to move forward with the contract unless we know that the full methodology that he plans to proceed is okay. And he's, my understanding, he's done projects in Wisconsin before, so this is not the first time. We just need to make sure we understand how, right? Now, again, public bidding laws 25 years ago, 26 years ago may have been very different from what they are now. The materials that are out there were most likely donated from local businesses, whereas the stuff we're talking about getting isn't really carried locally. So we'll work through that, but again, I'd say it's key that you not authorize the document to move forward until we have final approval from the city attorney.
Thank you, Nate. Questions? Not. Looking for a motion to approve the document pending review of the city attorney.
Todd, I'll move to approve the agreement for Eckhart Park project with Leathers and Associates, pending okay by the city's attorney.
Todd will second it.
All right, we've got a motion and a second.
If I may, just.
Absolutely.
I would clarify that your approval is only through the design phase for the total of 47. Do you have the number on you?
Yeah, 47, 87.
Did you get that, Lori?
47.
I needed a specific. You said $47,870.41, correct? Gotcha. And is that part of your motion, Todd?
That is exactly.
And is that part of your, part of your second? Okay.
Of course it is. All right, any other discussion?
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Steve,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Todd Kirking,
All right.
Emma,
Aye.
Todd Spath,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Crystal.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody. Let's take a quick 5-minute
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
He escaped. Yeah. So, sorry, but we're gonna go ahead and get back to business here. Item number 15 is the update on the fire station project.
It's all me, Nate, or what? All right. So couple things. One is just overall where we're at on the fire station project. And, but before that, I'll talk about the decision that Nate, Crystal, Justin, and myself, is that correct? We worked through, if you remember, we had the black dirt issue. You approved up to, I believe, $200,000 to deal with that issue. So we worked through that. Where it ended up was they did a little more detail work on how much black dirt they thought it was going to be and what other options they could come up with to limit that number. They did find some sand, quite a bit of sand on the property, quite a bit of clay on the property that they believe they're hoping will be enough to address the extra black dirt and so on and so forth. Long story short, it's $110,000 is what they came back with of being able to address those issues as they know it today. Of course, digging a hole 6-8 feet plus into the ground, you're not going to know until you do it, right? And how much product they'll have, but they feel pretty good about it. So that's where we ended up on that, and that's what we approved is 110,000. So can't say that it's done and over with 100%, but Nate, do you have a thought before I continued or? Okay. No, once you're done. So with that, one of the questions we talked about at public safety, as far as the overall where we're at on the project, one thing I'd mentioned or someone had asked is about the black dirt, the excess black dirt, since they've had excess of 24 inches deep, this black topsoil. So the answer to that question, what are we gonna do with all that black dirt? It's the city's, so we will keep it in one way, shape, or form. Whatever is left, minimally, Sarah has said that she will take it for city use because they've got projects coming up that need black dirt. So that's one scenario, and hopefully everything goes well, and that is the scenario with the black dirt. Although if we do run into a fill issue, there's a chance that we would maybe figure out a way to trade some black dirt for fill. So that would obviously be of value in some way, shape, or form. And then some of the black dirt's going to be needed for filling in what they're taking as far as fill that's currently on site. So hopefully that's clear as mud. No pun intended. Exactly. So any questions on where we're at on that piece? Otherwise, I'll just kind of follow up with where they're at today. Okay. So they started up again, I think last week sometime, moving black dirt, and today they finished moving all the black dirt. So the whole site has been stripped of the topsoil. Tomorrow and continuing on through next week, they're going to start moving that clay and piling it in areas that they'll need it. And then also they call it mining of sand and see how much sand they can get out and start creating the foundation or pad for the building itself. So hopefully by the end of next week, we'll have a really good feeling on how we're sitting on that whole situation. So aside from that, I guess I did talk about a few other things like longer term. October-ish is when the steel would be arriving and starting to go up. And they're on track at this point with the timeline that you guys have all been made aware of. I think I needed Nate. You got anything?
Yeah, and just to circle back to the approval of the use of the contingency for the $110,700 specifically. A couple questions that this group had that we had talked about before moving forward was using some of the black dirt as much as we can, and I feel like we followed through with that. Two was what responsibility, if any, does the soil boring company have in the matter? Frankly, we talked about it. We're going to continue to talk about it. Devin knows that it's a concern of ours, but regardless of what happens to that, there was no way that the soil boring company was ever going to pay out $110,000 without going to court, and the chances of that being successful was just extremely limited. And so we just didn't really go down that path. Devin still feels confident that they have some amount of responsibility in that, and so we'll continue to move on that, but we felt that that piece wasn't a big enough question mark to stop us from proceeding forward, because we're part of the reasons why this group gave us the authorization to move forward is that there are certainly some time constraints here, trying to get the building encapsulated as quickly as possible and things like that. So that's still more to come on the soil boring stuff. We haven't forgotten about it. And again, we still do believe there's some responsibility by the group, but it's not to the magnitude of 6 figures, right? The second piece is what other potential use of contingency might there be above and beyond this? If there was concern that, hey, this is $110,000 or $200,000 now, but then is there going to be another $200,000 ask later? And I think Devin did a really good job. I will give him a lot of kudos that over the course of the 2 weeks that we were trying to figure out the solution to this, he was spending a lot of time looking at different options and things like that. And I think he has a really good solution that if we do run into, first of all, he does feel confident that the plan that we have in place is going to work and that there's sufficient fill in the area to create a nice pad for the building. If for whatever reason that doesn't play out, there is opportunity to sort of drop the site a little bit and reduce the amount of fill that is needed. So he does have contingency plans on top of this that will sort of get us out of having to pay a knot. Now, nothing's done until it's done, but I do feel like there was a lot of due diligence done on his part in order to answer those 2 questions. Between, I'll sort of say my piece of it, but I felt like the sense of the 4 people who were tasked with approving this all felt like this is the best we're going to get, right? We asked all the right questions, we dug, you know, and there's just going to continue to be unknowns until the project gets a little bit further along, because a lot of property, they just started excavating on last Monday, somewhere in there. And so there still might be trip ups and stuff like that, but frankly, that just can't be helped. But we did feel good at the very least that the full amount that was authorized for us to spend wasn't spent. So just to give you more of the background and hopefully instill confidence in you that we did put a lot of time and thought into it, and that Keller put a lot of time and thought into it as well to get us to the point of it. And we don't want to make light of it. And that we are still most certainly still within budget. Okay. All right.
Nate said it, but I'll say it again just to make it clear, because I have had some citizens concern, you know, when they heard about this, that, you know, you're already going over budget. No, this is well within the contingency that was included in the original budget. And it's a far cry from utilizing the available contingencies. So just if you hear it from your constituents, you can reassure them that still that this amount that's being spent was budgeted for issues. This was an issue. We've expended some money. So
And
just
the fact is we just don't make light of using that much.
exactly.
Just really, right. Penny saved is a penny earned. All right.
Anything else, Chief?
That's all I got unless anybody has questions.
Yep. Any questions for anyone?
The next 3.
All right. If not, we're going to move on to item number 16, which is discussion with possible action on commercial building inspection ordinance. And this will be the first reading.
So the next 3 items pertain to the commercial building inspection portion of my job. GEC is the company that the city contracts with to do our building inspections and permitting of new buildings and things like that. They came to me probably 3-4 months ago and gave us a ample ordinance of things that are required by state and things that they're required to have to be able to do their job appropriately for the city currently and moving forward. I handed all that stuff over to George, the city attorney, to review. He took a look at our current ordinances and tried to mold together, I guess, together, keep what we've got, but also make changes to satisfy what GEC needs to satisfy the state. It's a delegation, basically. We're delegating these services. The city's required to have this in place, so on and so forth. So we've captured some certain words, certain pieces of it to meet those requirements. And that is what this first one is for. I can get a little more detailed if you like, but that's really what it comes down to. It's saying that we have services. These are the requirements to build anything new and or, remodel, I believe it talks about in there. And that, you know, we will provide this service and it's going, it doesn't say GEC because that could change, right? But it satisfies those, checks those marks. So this all also went to GEC to get their look at it and make sure that we are capturing what their needs were to satisfy their requirements with the state too. They were good with it, how he worded it and made it our own. George is good with it, and that's why it's in front of you for your first reading and whatever you want to do from there.
Cindy, I make a motion, we approve the ordinance revising section 15.19.010 of Viroqua Municipal. Am I in the wrong one? Possible action on commercial.
You
building
are.
Inspection ordinance. I'm sorry. I make a motion, we approve the commercial building inspection ordinance and waive the second reading.
Second.
All right, got a motion and a
It's
second.
awful long.
Any other questions? And we can just do a voice vote on that, right? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. We'll move on down to item number 17, discussion with possible action on ordinance revising section 15.9.010 of Viroqua Municipal Code regarding permit and inspection fees. This is also the first reading.
This is attached to that previous one. The next two actually are going to be essentially the same thing. So I know you got to do it separately, but I'm just prefacing that. So I only have to talk once because it'll be the same exact words. So there's two sections in our ordinances that have spelled out certain fees, certain dollar amounts. And the problem with doing that is every time a fee goes up, you have to go through the process of changing your ordinance, which is not smart at all. It's busy work, right? So this is worded as is, you know, you have to look up the fees. There's going to be a fee schedule, which we have, and it will change from time to time on your authority. And getting rid of all those dollar amounts out of the ordinance and wording it what you see up on the screen. So there's two different sections. That's why there's two different ordinances that have to be changed. So this will address the one. And then obviously the second will address the other section, getting all those dollar amounts out of there, and it'll be by fee schedule only.
Thanks, Chief. Questions? Done.
Todd, I'll move to approve revising section 15.19.010 of the Viroqua Municipal Code regarding permit and inspection fees. First reading.
They waived the second reading on the last one. I don't know if you're interested, but just so you're aware, you have the ability to waive the second reading and then this does not have to come back.
Right. Yeah.
That's the case on the next two.
Okay. Yeah. Waive the second reading then. Yes.
Second it.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That passes, and we'll move on to number 18, discussion with possible action on ordinance revising section 15.18.070 of Viroqua Municipal Code regarding building permit fees and inspection fees. This is also the first reading, and the chief already explained this one. So if you have questions, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'd look for a motion.
All right.
I'll motion to approve revising section 15.18.070 of the Viroqua Municipal Code regarding building permit fees and inspection fees.
Todd, I'll second it.
Do you want to have a second reading or do you want to waive the second reading?
Waive the second reading, yes.
Okay. You second
I'll
that
second
too?
that too.
All right. You got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes.
Thank
Yep, thanks, Chief. Item number 19, payment of the bills.
Cindy, I make a motion, we pay the bills.
I'll second it.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? We'll do a roll call.
Seth,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Kirking,
Aye.
Emma,
Make a motion, we go into closed session.
Steve, I'll second.
And we've got a motion and a second. And Seth,
who got the second? I didn't catch that.
Steve.
Okay.
Right. So go ahead.
You need me
Yep.
to be excused?
Yep. So the last time this was brought up, Seth had made a mention that he needs to recuse himself from this one. So we're going to excuse him now. And Once everybody's out, we'll close the doors and
You
move
gotta do a
forward.
roll call yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we're
Roll call.
technically not in it yet.
That's fine.
Seth?
He doesn't get to vote on it, does he?
Yes, he does.
Does he?
He still has to vote. So we need to get him in here yet.
Sorry. We're getting a little jumpy at the end of the night. We gotta do a roll
We
call.
gotta do a
then
roll
you can
call
leave.
first. Okay. Andrew.
Aye.
Todd Kirking.
Aye.
Emma.
Aye.
Todd Spath.
Aye.
Cindy.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Crystal.
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
And Seth.
Aye.
All right. Now you can leave. Thank you. be back.
Recording in progress.
Oh,
All right.
oh, yeah, he had to sit out there. didn't he? I thought he was just gonna go.
I was like, I don't know.
All
if
right.
Stick around or not.
So we're back.
Okay.
We're recording. We're unmuted. Folks who are with us are back in as well, so you're good to go.
Got it. So we are back in open session. Item number 21 is to reconvene an open session with possible action on items discussed in closed session. I'll just mention that Seth will be abstaining from this vote, but he's back in the room because we're back in open session. So
Okay, this is Crystal, and I'm gonna move that we approve the settlement agreement as was discussed in the closed session.
I don't second it.
So I already had it on. Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Emma,
Hi.
Todd Spade,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Seth is abstaining,
Abstain.
Andrew.
Aye.
And Todd Kirking.
All right.
All right. Item number 22, second period for public comment. We've got nobody here.
Yeah, we got a
Anyone
couple
online?
people online. If anybody online wants to make a public comment, they can do so at this time.
Hearing none, I am going to move on to item number 23, which is adjournment.
Todd will make a motion to adjourn.
Steve, I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
We'll turn them off. Yeah, it's like, speak on. It was really minimal. Yeah. It was like, you know. It's been very, pretty good for eternity.
Rec-